Welcome to the Better Business Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Zelan. Join me week after week as I interview high-level entrepreneurs on their journey to success, both in business and personal development. Each week presents new stories to learn from and new ideas on how to run a better business. Stay updated with all the guests we'll have by subscribing to this podcast. Welcome to another episode of Better Business with Austin Zelan. I'm so excited to be here today with Lance Drury. He's going to talk with us about taxes. Now, I know it might not sound super exciting, but we already had a bit of a conversation right before this, and there are so many things in regards to taxes and tax law that sometimes business owners just do not understand. And so we want to give you guys some actionable takeaways during this podcast that you can immediately apply to your business. And here's the thing, you don't have to know everything. There are many tax firms and accountants and lawyers that can help you throughout that process, but it's important to know some of the basics. So at least you're setting yourself up for success and you have the highest chance of succeeding and, running a successful business and not having any issues with the IRS. So Lance, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm very excited for this interview personally. I know you've got a lot of business experience that I can't wait to learn from. And so maybe you could just start out by sharing a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. I know now you're running this company and this business, and it probably wasn't always like that. So if you could give us a little bit of background, kind of how you got started, what maybe jobs you had, and then how you got to where you're at today.
Sure. I didn't start out as an entrepreneur. When I first came out of law school, I joined the Missouri Public Defender System, and I did week-long murder trials. I did all kinds of stuff with the Missouri State Public Defender. And finally, I elevated myself so that I was running 8 offices for them in Southeast Missouri, all the way from Jefferson City to the Boot Hill to West Plains. And it wasn't until my early 50s that I started this entrepreneurial journey. I had a small town law practice, and I have to tell you that small town attorneys, generally, it's not very lucrative. So one night, late at night, I'm in the office. It's probably 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And I came across this program from an attorney in Colorado, and he was having some booklets on tax resolution work. That is dealing with the IRS and getting people agreements, protecting their interest, helping them out during audits, that type of thing. And so I thought, well, I'll get the books. So I got the books and studied them. And then he had a seminar down in Tampa, Florida. So I went there. So then he started a group out in Colorado, and I joined that group. But it wasn't going far. And I knew after a while that I had enough marketing ability to go into St. Louis. And when I went into St. Louis, and I just told him one day, we're going into St. Louis in 30 days. And that's what I did. And that's the best thing I ever did. And it's just blossomed since then.
Awesome. Okay. So it seems like you've kind of built up your experience and your credibility, and then you were strategically approaching a market that you wanted to be a part of. And it sounds like it's turned out to be a big success.
It has. We have offices now, not only in St. Louis and St. Genevieve, Missouri. St. Genevieve is a small town about an hour south of St. Louis. But we're in Nashville, Tennessee. We have 4 people in Tennessee, 3 attorneys and a legal assistant. And we've just opened an office the first of the year in San Antonio, Texas. And I hope to continue to grow it. In fact, we may go national. I don't know. Do you know Clay Travis?
Clay Travis? No, I don't know Clay.
Okay. He's a big conservative radio guy. He replaced Rush Limbaugh, and he wanted me to go national on his program. And we're still trying to figure out how we're going to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that would be a good move to go national. It sounds like the next logical steps next logical step for where you're at in business. So, okay, cool. Now, being an entrepreneur, it's very different than having a 9-to-5 job. So are there certain things that really excite you about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I like the fact that I get to run the business. Well, in theory, anyway. I work with a lot of women, so you know how that goes. But anyway, it's a great deal to be able to grow the business. I like growing things. I like helping people out, and I can help more people out by running the business than being just a solo practitioner. We have about 800 clients in the office now. When I did it myself, we might have had 100. So I can help more people, save more people's lives from the clutches of the IRS. And so that brings me a lot of satisfaction that I have the ability to do that. And I have to tell you, you have to be a different kind of animal to want to be an entrepreneur. You got to have a different type of mindset. I'd say 90% of the people just wouldn't want to do it. They just don't want the responsibility that it involves. And I relish it. It gives me a sense of purpose to get up every morning. And that's what I like. That's why I'm 70 and I'm continuing to work, because I think I would lose that sense of purpose.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great motivational tool to have a business and know that you're growing this thing. And it's just exciting. You know, every day you wake up and you get to work on it. I feel the same way in my companies as well. And okay, so did you always know you were going to be an entrepreneur, or was it something that maybe you imagined or aspired to be, or did it just kind of happen?
Well, I think it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
I started out, just being a lawyer with the public defender system. Then I was a solo practitioner in St. Genevieve, and it just sort of happened. I was kind of forced to run my own business, but then I started enjoying it, and then I saw possibilities in different areas where I could grow it, because tax resolution is a niche. Most lawyers, most accountants do not want to get anywhere close to the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have a whole lot of competition. I do by far more of this type of work than anybody in the St. Louis area, and the day's going to come soon when we do more of this than anybody else in Nashville. It takes a while to grow the business, but yeah, it's very satisfying from that angle.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So if somebody here is watching this, you mentioned a little bit about mindset and having an entrepreneurial mindset. What do you think it takes mentally to be an entrepreneur, and how can people cultivate that mindset?
That's a good question. It's sort of like you learn as you go, and you got to be able to take risk. If you just sit back and play it safe, you're not going to get anywhere. You got to be able, of course, they're calculated risk. You put a lot of time into thinking about where you want to go and how you're going to do it, but you have to have the ability to take risk. And you also have to have the willpower, the stamina to overcome moments that are going to be difficult. People quitting, you're short-staffed. Or like during the pandemic, the IRS did not actively levy people, which means they weren't cleaning out their bank accounts. They weren't taking 75% of their take-home pay. And so guess what? The business was in the tank for 2020, because that's when people call you. When the IRS sends those nasty letters that say, we intend to levy, that's when people get on the horn and they call you and they want your services.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. And so if a business owner wants to protect themselves from being levied or from having these issues, what are some things that they could apply to their company?
Well, what they need to do is to stay current on their taxes. They need to file on time. They need to pay on time. And a lot of business owners, payroll is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
They get in trouble.
Payroll taxes?
Payroll taxes. Okay. They don't pay their payroll taxes because they pay their employees, they pay their suppliers, they think they're going to catch up next month. Somebody obviously didn't pay them, so that's why they're putting that bind. And so what happens is they don't catch up the next quarter. It just snowballs, and it just keeps going. Or they go through bad economic times, or some of them just don't know how to run a business. They're great at what they do, but running a business, like I said earlier, is not just for everybody. And a lot of business people that have their own business just don't want to go through the paperwork that's involved, don't want to go through the time that's involved in this, because there's a lot more paperwork when you're self-employed than if you're a wage earner.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to satisfy that, or you're not going to be profitable in your business, and you're going to get in trouble with Uncle Sam.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say it's very important then to hire maybe like a tax accountant or a tax attorney right away when starting a business? Or if somebody's just starting a business, should they just kind of see if the business even works and then hire somebody, or what's the timing on that?
Well, that's one of the things that we're going to start doing. We do offer tax planning services, but I think there's a huge need out there. And we are talking to a couple other people about helping these people manage their businesses, because they just don't have the wherewithal to do it. They need to hire an accountant. They try to do the taxes on their own, thinking they're going to save themselves some money, and they screw it up. They file late. They don't pay enough, whatever. And so they need to have somebody that can help them, not only in the management of the business, but also somebody to make sure that they're on track with paying their taxes.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's definitely something that's very important. And, sometimes people just overlook it, whether it's just a lack of education or a lack of understanding or whatever it is, but it's something that has to be addressed and taken care of in a timely manner, like you said, because that's how you avoid problems
Right.
down the line. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, one thing also I wanted to talk about is as you've grown in business, how have you been able to scale your company to where it is right now? Did you have any mentors along the way or maybe consultants that you brought in?
Yeah, Michael Rosebrook was a huge influence on my life. He once did 24 million in revenue one year in Los Angeles
Mm,
as a tax resolution guy, and then he got out of that. And what he does now is he mentors people who are tax resolution people. He had a mastermind group. We'd meet 3 times a year in Los Angeles. So I got a lot of great tips from Michael on how to run a business and how to grow my business and how to scale it.
yeah.
And so I've employed the same model in San Antonio that I did in Nashville. And it's just going to take a while. We've only been on the radio down there since the middle of January. So it takes a while before people, because I get people all the time. They've heard me on the radio for 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
but they continue to ignore their problem because the people that I represent are procrastinators. They don't want to address the problem. It's too much work. I got to file those returns. I got to go through all that paperwork. I got to organize all that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that now. I'll do it later. And so they'll listen to me on the radio, but they don't call. And it's amazing how many people hire me after listening to me on the radio for 3 or 4 years.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, but like you said it, I think you said it perfectly. You're working for the procrastinators. That is your target demographic. So naturally, they're also going to procrastinate to call you. So they're going to wait until the last minute to file their taxes. Then they're too late. Then they're going to wait till the last minute to call you. And so it's just a cycle.
Well, let me tell you my target demographic. It's males. They're self-employed. They're in their 40s or 50s. They have a substance abuse problem, or they had one at one time. They're divorced. They have 2 children. They hate the government. So when we're on the radio, it's sports stations and conservative talk radio because that's what they listen to.
Wow, interesting. You really know your audience well.
Well, I think you have to know your audience before you just throw money out there into marketing. You got to know how to target that money.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. But I love that. And so you mentioned radio marketing. I know, I've never done radio marketing, but is that like the only source of marketing that you do? Or do you do like Google ads or Facebook ads, anything like that?
We do Google ads. We do pay-per-click. We do local service ads. We send out a newsletter every month to attorneys and accountants and realtors in St. Louis and Nashville and soon to be in San Antonio. So it's not the only type of marketing that we do. And we probably do more. We used to do lien letters because federal tax liens are a matter of public record. You can get those lists from people. And so we used to send out lien lists. We haven't done that in a long time, but that's another area that people in my field, they will send out letters to people that have federal liens because they know they have liability.
Interesting. Okay. And yeah, it sounds like you've got a pretty diverse marketing strategy, but would you say radio is one of your top lead sources or maybe the number one lead source?
It is my number one lead source. We're on television a little, not much, because you don't have the return on investment on television that you do on radio.
Interesting.
Radio's probably 4 to 1. The problem is the cost of television is so high that a lot of people have tried it and they're only breaking even. Google's worked out pretty well for us. And then we're all over social media as well. We post a lot of things on social media. We're starting to do more YouTube commercials. People call me from seeing some of the YouTube commercials that I've done.
Yeah.
So there's a variety there, and you've just got to test the market and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So diverse marketing strategy, you're testing a lot of different things and you're relying on even like radio. I didn't realize that radio could convert so well, but that's awesome to hear that, it is working. And it sounds like you're very pinpointed though with who's watching it and what what channels you're on, or you're very targeted with that, and that's good. And I think it's important in any type of marketing approach. So I think that if somebody is listening to this and they want to also expand their horizons, how would you approach radio marketing? Would you want them to firstly do the research and find out what shows their demographic is listening to, and then target that specific show for advertising, or just kind of test out different ones?
No, I think you got to do your homework first. I think you have to know who your ideal customer is, and then look at, okay, which radio stations are going to satisfy that particular prospective client.
Okay. And so we talked a little bit earlier about also continuing education. And you talked about leadership coaching, and you're part of a leadership program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What kind of continued education do you do to develop your mindset and your abilities?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think they can work with the IRS on their own, and they generally just create more problems. So let me tell you, in terms of continuing legal education, when I was just a small town lawyer, I did 15 hours a year of continuing legal education. With the IRS, every attorney in my offices and the enrolled agent and myself do 50 to 100 hours a year or more just keeping up with the IRS, because things are changing all the time. And so you got to put in the time in terms of that. So you have to do all that continuing legal education.
And if somebody's not in the legal industry and they're just running a business, what other types of continuing education do you do? Maybe like leadership courses or anything like that?
Well, I'm doing that for my own business primarily, the leadership course.
Yeah.
They need to go out. I'm sure that they can just Google what you should do if you run a small business, but they don't do that. I've had people who were my clients tell me that they didn't realize they learned so much from hiring me in terms of running a small business that they were never aware of before, because they just don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
And nobody says, here's what you got to do before you go into small business. Yeah. And so they just go out there because they want to be their own boss. They want to do this type of work, but they don't look into what does it take in order to be successful in that business.
Okay. Interesting. And so, as you've grown in business, obviously your potential has gotten bigger and bigger. And you mentioned that you're still continuing to grow your business and expand it. What things have you done? Maybe you could list 2 or 3 strategies that you've used to continually grow and expand your business.
Well, obviously we test the market. We go in, we don't go in full force on radio. We're not spending as much money in San Antonio as we do in Nashville and St. Louis, just because we want to test the market at this point. We have an office, but, I haven't gone down there yet. I want to wait till we have 4 or 5 offices. They're just calling in now, and that's the same model that we used in Nashville. In fact, what's interesting about this is we tested the market in Nashville, and after 3 months, we got out because we were losing money. Well, I went to my mastermind group that summer, and lo and behold, I found out that probably half of them there had been losing money. And this was right around the time of the pandemic because the IRS wasn't levying. So we went back in, and the second time we were successful. And, Nashville is probably, St. Genevieve's a small town. It's an hour away from St. Louis. More people want to go to Nashville. So Nashville handles the overflow for the Missouri office, because Missouri still has 60 to 70% of the total number of cases. But it's great that we can take the cases and send them there, because I'm going to get better people, because it's more attractive to people to live in Nashville.
Yeah.
I mean, Nashville is the place to be in the Midwest. I mean, I don't know how that happened, but it is just unbelievable how Nashville has grown and will continue to grow.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So sounds like you are a big fan of masterminds and having that community of people. How important would you say for a new business owner is it to have a mastermind that they're a part of, or maybe a community of people that they surround themselves with? And where can they find these communities?
Well, I think it's extremely important. And if they don't have a community, they should at the very least have a mentor.
Yeah.
Somebody who's been involved in that particular business and who's been successful in that business that can help them out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if they just go on and Google, they can find groups all over the place, or they can go on Facebook and find groups that, there's groups like that on Facebook all the time. There's groups in our industry that are all over Facebook. And so it's not difficult to find those types of groups that can really help you out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about new technologies that are coming out, and specifically artificial intelligence. And I know it's being implemented in certain law applications as well. Have you used AI in your business?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm technologically challenged, but I have dabbled in Chat GPT, and I think that we're going to use it. I think what we're going to do is, now the problem with Chat GPT, though, is for marketing purposes, I've been told by my marketing group, Google can sort that out when they know it's artificial intelligence, so you don't get the boost in your SEO. But we're still gonna do blog posts, and some of them are going to be Chat GPT generated, but we're going to have to make changes to it because Chat GPT is not 100% accurate. But it's a good start. The other thing that we're going to use it for, I'm going to do much more video in the future in terms of marketing, and I'm going to get topics. I'm going to get scripts for like a minute commercial that I'm going to be able to use in my marketing from Chat GPT.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm going to review it, and if I don't like something, I'm going to change it, or I'm going to add something to it, but it saves a lot of time when you do that.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree with you. And it's cool to see that people are realizing the value of artificial intelligence. And especially, like you said, just to get a starting point, even if we're just writing something, we need to write an ad or some copy or a blog post, we can use ChatGPT as a starting point.
Right.
And then we just kind of tweak it and, and fix it up to do what it needs to do. And that's interesting that you have already noticed that Google will not give you the SEO boost if it's ChatGPT generated. So that's definitely something to consider. I think that any entrepreneur, if they're totally relying on artificial intelligence, they should know that maybe their blog posts or their website or whatever is going to be a little bit suppressed because they're not writing these things themselves.
Right.
So,
and I think it's a great tool to utilize. I don't know that it's ever going to replace, maybe for certain things it will eventually replace them.
Yeah.
But for people who are in a service-oriented industry like I'm in, I don't think it's going to replace us. It can certainly save us time. It can certainly help streamline the process for it, but I don't think it's going to totally take over the industry.
You don't think that there's ever going to be like an AI lawyer that will just replace?
In some areas, yes. Much more the transactional, not the service-oriented.
Oh, gotcha. Like facilitating transactions and stuff.
Right,
like that.
right.
Gotcha.
Contracts, things of that nature. But for something where you're dealing and you have to deal with people
Negotiate.
or with bureaucracies or negotiate, that's probably going to be a much longer time frame for that to come off.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I've been reading a lot about artificial intelligence and how it's being implemented in business. And now there are even talks about having an AI CEO just totally run the company. And I could see the benefits of it. Perhaps they're less emotional. They make very logical decisions. But I also think that there's probably a bad side to it at some point, where it's a little bit too logical to make a decision. I think emotion definitely has its place in business. So, okay, interesting. And one other thing I wanted to talk about is external consultants. So, I have a consulting company, and a lot of business owners have also hired consultants for specific parts of their business. Have you had a lot of success with consultants, like bringing them in, for example, to improve a process or to build something out for you for your business? Have you used consultants?
I do have a group that is sort of marketing, and we have coaching sessions every couple weeks. And there's also things about how to grow the business and the marketing. So it's basically marketing, managerial, all that. So we do have that in place. Yes. So I do have that type of consultant that I utilize quite often too.
And so you have them on retainer, or is it just like
I pay a flat fee every month for them to do it. And, they work with like Facebook ads, they do the local service ads, all of that. So it's beneficial because you got to be a certain size before you could bring that in to the firm itself and hire somebody on a full-time basis to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally understand that. And as far as, growing a company, what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you were on this journey? Obviously, you've expanded into multiple markets, you've grown your business. Like if somebody's watching this and they want to get to your level, what are some challenges they may encounter on that path?
Well, again, I think you have to have a willingness to take risk. And then I think the other thing is people are resistant to change.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I want to grow the business, that doesn't necessarily mean that my employees want to grow the business. What happens is they want you to grow when you interview them for a job, but once they're in place, they get comfortable. There's new challenges. They get used to their job, and they're not necessarily as willing to want to grow the business as perhaps I do. Now, I do have some people that are, but I have some people that are resistant to that.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's going to be more work, or we're going to bring on more people and we're not all going to be able to get along, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's human nature, I think.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. And it's interesting to make note of that we know when somebody's trying to get hired, they want the best for the business. They want the business to grow. But then once they get comfortable, it's like they don't get paid any more money if the business grows, usually. But sometimes it is an arrangement that they do get paid, maybe bonuses or something along those lines. So have you looked into any sort of incentive program to get those people motivated?
It's interesting that you brought this up because starting this year, the attorney in my St. Genevieve, Missouri office, who's done great work, and the attorney that runs my Nashville, Tennessee office, I'm going to give them 5% of the profit of the business for the year, and that will continue. Now, eventually, I'm working on getting my succession plan in place, and I've been working with a lawyer with getting all that done.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully I will have somebody that can take over the business, if not during my lifetime at my death, so that we can keep this going.
Yeah, definitely. And would you want somebody to come up from your business, like somebody who's already there and you bring them up into leadership and they take over the business? Or would you consider hiring somebody that's just outside?
I would probably prefer to hire somebody who's already in the business.
Yeah.
Because they're a known commodity. Mm-hmm. I know what they're like. I know what they can do.
Mm.
I know what their willingness to work longer is. I know what their ability to get along with people is. I know what their commitment to our clientele is. So it might be more of an X factor if I just brought somebody in from the outside to do that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of risk with that. But I see how hiring somebody from within could be more beneficial. That is if you have somebody in mind already.
Now, if you weren't happy with the way the business was running or going, then you might not want to hire somebody that's in the business. You might need that person from the outside to try to shake up the culture of the business.
Yeah, shake up the culture and just have like a third person point of view on what's going on, kind of looking at it from the side. And so you could see, oh, okay, this is wrong, or this needs to be improved. And I think there's definitely a lot of benefit to something like that. Now, within your company, I know we talked a little bit about employees and culture and knowing how they are and their willingness to go the extra mile. Do you have any sort of employee development programs within your company where you're helping them grow to the next level and developing leadership skills and all that stuff?
I don't really have anything formal in place for that.
Okay.
I mean, I've tried to get them on board. The ones who are going to do good work, I'm going to give them a bite of the pie, to giving them incentive to grow the business. And, if they do good work and the business continues to grow, they should take a share of the profits. I strongly believe that. And, I want them to do that. So I'm probably going to continue to do more of that. And obviously there's opportunities there because I have people who, like in my Nashville office, I have an attorney there and, maybe one day he'll go down and run the San Antonio office. So there's that kind of development. And when I hire people, I tell them, this company is only going to grow. There's always going to be opportunities to advance for you down the road. And that's basically from opening up more offices and having somebody there to run those offices.
Yeah, absolutely. So is your goal then for people coming into the business, they grow up to a more senior level and then they get their own office?
That's part of it, yes. And I want people there to be there a long time.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cost to training people. And I've had some situations recently where people just didn't pan out. And I can't blame it all on the millennials, because I've had a 60 and a 65-year-old that really didn't want to work either. So it's not a generational thing. I think it's a mindset thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, there's just some people that, it's not the right fit for them. So it just happens, so, okay, cool. Now, as far as sales process goes, we haven't really touched too much on sales. We talked about marketing and operations and employee development, but when it comes to sales, what does your sales process look like?
Well, the calls come in, or they can go to a chat thing on my website.
Yeah.
Or when the office is closed, we have a 24/7 answering service. So there's various ways they can get a hold of my office. So they get some background information. And then what happens is, if they don't call in directly to the office, my legal assistants, they're all trained in using a script for the intake, because you have to meet certain criteria in order to be qualified to have my services. And so they can screen out those individuals who are not going to be able to qualify, and it won't be useful for them. And then they go through that whole process, and they're very good on the phone. I get a lot of compliments from people about how they gave them peace of mind and took their anxiety away. And so we're big on that. We want people to be client oriented. And then if they do qualify, then they set up an initial consultation with me, either in person or over the telephone.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's one of those industries that it's not really optional. Like if you're in trouble with taxes, you kind of need your services, right? And then it's just a matter of choosing who you're going to work with.
And it's very lucrative as compared to small town practice, because people are scared of the IRS. I tell people, I'm saving Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong. And this is how people feel when they deal with the IRS on their own. They're probably the most terrifying agency in the federal arsenal. So they're willing to pay big bucks if you can help them out. They're willing to pay for it because they know they can't do it on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, it's a great service that you're providing, I believe. And I think it's helping a lot of people take back control of their business and their tax situation and just get back on track, So, yeah, awesome. Cool. Now, just to wrap up here, what are a couple things that you want to leave our audience with that they can walk away with, whether it's tax related or, just general business or life advice? We just like to hear maybe 2 or 3 things that are top of mind for you that you would like to leave our audience with.
Well, in terms of your taxes, you got to make your estimated tax payments, or you got to have enough withheld. Because if you don't, you're going to fall into tax trouble. The best part, the best advice I can give you is preventative. Don't get into this problem. Don't get to the point where you need my services. The other thing on a personal level, though, is you've got to be resilient. I've had more comebacks in my life than Tricky Dick and Slick Willie combined. I mean, I've had a lot of tough times in my life, and, it was a hard lesson to learn, but you just got to stick with it, and eventually it'll all work out.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing maybe 1 or 2 of those hard times with us?
Yeah, I suffered from depression when I was young. My parents divorced when I was young. I only had one other classmate in a class of 120 whose parents were divorced, so it was very traumatic to me because I was very close to my father.
Yeah.
So I became very rebellious after that. And then in my young 20s, I suffered from depression. I was hospitalized. I went through shock treatments. And then even after that, I had another bad episode, but it's been 25, 30 years since I've had any problems there. So it's a tough deal when you go through it, but everybody goes through hard times. You just got to stick with it.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely understand that. And I think it's a testament to your grit and your resilience and your willingness to work through those things to get to the next level and continue winning and growing. And I think it's always important to have that forward momentum in life. Whether we're doing it on our own or with the support of others, it's important to get out of those tough places and to get back on track and to continue growing. So, okay, cool. So if somebody wants to find your website or learn more about what you do, what's a good place to find you?
you need to go to lancedrurylaw.com, and there you can find out all the telephone numbers for all the offices that I have out of Nashville, out of St. Louis, out of St. Genevieve, out of San Antonio. And just call us. We'll be more than happy to help you out. We've helped out thousands of people, and we intend to help thousands more before I'm done.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Guys, this is Lance Drury we have here. Very, very important stuff that we talked about today. If you're running a business and you're wanting to take things to the next level, tax wise, and you want to make sure that you're paying the correct taxes and you're not forgetting anything or missing anything, he's the guy to talk to. Obviously, he's very experienced at what he does, and he is good at it. So thank you for joining us today. This is Better Business with Austin Zelan, and I'll see you all in the next episode.